We've had lots of conversations that have placed math at the center of this nexus, right? Whether it's around professional learning for our pre-service teachers, our in-service teachers, high-quality instructional materials. We even heard some nuggets around parent and family engagement. But perhaps one quality that I would offer, or one aspect that undergirds all of this, is data. And so to that, we'll turn to our final session, which is about how do we use data to ask the right questions, to inform instruction, as well as to inform policy. We know that data use is a common thread that has been highlighted across all of our panels today. And so to that end, I'm pleased to welcome our final panelists for the event. Dean Folkers, the Senior Director of Education Data and Technology here at CCSSO, and then Katrina Miller, who serves as the Director of Educational Partnerships at SAS. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Jonathan. It is indeed a pleasure to be a part of this experience, to be one of the closing sessions, to reflect on the through line. We've heard today, throughout the afternoon, some iteration, some version, some use of data, whether it's from the assessment side, whether it's about looking at the critical nature of access to courses, the high-quality instructional materials, their efficacy and use. Data is like everywhere. And we also even heard that data is the problem. And so we're excited.
That was my favorite, right? Being from a data company.
Yes, in fact, my former boss at the Nebraska Department of Education, the Commissioner Matt Bloomstead, used to joke with me all the time, and he would say, "Dean, this data thing is just a fad. Don't worry about it." But my role was to be an advocate for the information systems and the data and the work that have been happening. And so I'm thrilled today to have Katrina share with us some insights. And I'd love to have you start with maybe a story or some experience that you've had maybe with a principal, I think, and how they've used data to effectively impact this issue.
Yes, thank you, Dean, and thank you all. I know we are standing between you and a reception, so we are cognizant of that. But this day has been super fun, and it started out with the Excel and Ed person telling a story about North Carolina, and I was like, I'm telling a similar story, and I realized she was actually talking about a policy that I want to tell you kind of the impetus of that and where it started. So about 15 years ago, there was a principal in North Carolina who was teaching in a low-income rural school that was about 80% students of color, and as she walked around her school and looked at the class makeup, she went into an accelerated math class, which was 8th grade algebra in that school. And she saw that the demographics of that class were very, very different than the other part of her school. It was predominantly affluent white students in that class. So she began to kind of question what's going on here, whether it's implicit or unconscious bias, whether it is access to resources, access to acceleration, teachers. She just started to kind of look at the data. And one of the things that she had known about and had training on was a tool that we have called EVOS, which allows them to look, what you probably know it as is a growth model, but what it also allows us to look at is kind of forward thinking. And there was a comment earlier about the autopsies that we often do in education, and we often talk about the postmortems. And this teacher was like, I don't want to look on what's happened in the past. I really want to use this technology and these projections to think about what can happen in the future, what's likely to happen in the future, and how we can change that trajectory for these students. So what she did is she took all of the students in her 7th grade and said, okay, after you take your 7th grade assessment, if you have a 70% chance or better of passing algebra, I'm going to automatically enroll you in 8th grade algebra. That's all she did. She didn't ask teachers for input, which we know is important. She didn't ask parents. She didn't look at grades. She didn't go talk to the students. She looked at a single data point. And we know that kids aren't a single data point. And there was a lot of data points within that projection that we do that's using artificial intelligence and the power of technology and data to make that up. But she looked at a single data point. And she said, okay, I'm going to accelerate you if you hit this benchmark or threshold. She tripled the number of students in 8th grade algebra and maintained a 94% pass rate. 94%, with 3 times the number of students. And the students that it really impacted were those students of colors, especially African American boys. And as an aunt to several African American boys and a parent of a special needs student, seeing all those demographic factors taken away and a decision based on what is this student's potential and how can we help them reach it is so incredibly powerful. So powerful, in fact, that they began using that data at the district and said, okay, if you have a 70% chance of passing algebra, we're going to automatically enroll you. And now it's state policy that's being recognized on a national stage. But this started 15 years ago with one principal in one middle school, just seeing a difference in her students. That's so powerful. And it really summed up the whole conversation today of the power of the individual teacher, giving them access to the data that they can use that's not overwhelming, and data that can actually make a difference in the lives of those students.
Perfect. And a powerful story and a great demonstration of connecting a person's decision and passion about solving a problem, but ultimately leveraging and moving into something even more powerful. So thinking about the wash of data, and I think the core of the slide that said data is the problem was that there's too much data. That there's data in this silo, there's data in that silo, there's in this assessment system, we've got this dashboard that does this, and it becomes noise. Would love to have your thoughts around sort of the connection of bringing those things together and leveraging tools that can provide or move data into a forecasting or predicting kind of mode.
Sure. So one of the things that I love about where I work is our company slogan is the power to know. And it's not just about those individual data points of like, here's an assessment data, but it's really connecting all the data together and providing the insights that you need to make decisions. How do you know something and actually do something different? And so we heard earlier about, we have this assessment system. We have these through paths, these through assessments that are so powerful. And then you have all of this data getting in those packets, and I've seen those packets. And I remember the dot matrix reports, if y'all got those. Those were super fun to read when it's all one big sheet of paper. But that's really not actionable for an individual teacher in the classroom. So what we are seeing states do that's really powerful is using all that data, putting it in a system, providing predictive analytics on top of it, and then allowing it to do multiple things. So one of the comments earlier was, we were worried about assessment wasn't designed to do this. Well, a phone wasn't originally designed to play music or take pictures or do video calls, but it does all of those things, right? And so when you have this whole collection of data and the technology to enable that data to do different things, you should take advantage of it. So that's one of the things we see states using is leveraging the data, like looking at what are the interventions that are making a difference. We had one state who implemented high-dosage tutoring and summer school programs, and they said, can we use things like assessment and growth data and predictive analytics to say which ones are working better and which ones are working better for which types of students, because not all things work for all types of students. So we're using and leveraging those data points that we collect, and not testing again or testing more, but using them in a variety of ways to really make decisions on a variety of things.
Terrific. I think we're down to our last question. This was, I think, a quick hit, short segment. I have the privilege of working with the Chief Information Officer Network in our Education Information Management group, the SEA representatives that are all about data and technology and supporting the SEAs. What advice would you give this audience, state leaders, about thinking through the connections and dots related to data and what advice would you give them?
I think my biggest advice is know which questions you're wanting to answer on the early piece. And in order to do that, you're going to need the right people in the room. So, for instance, when I talk about evaluating high-dosage tutoring in summer school, after they implemented that, they said, well, which ones actually worked best, right? We went back and looked at the data, and they were like, oh, well, we didn't actually look at, who did the tutoring. We know you got tutoring, but we don't know if it was like a teacher, a certified teacher, if it was a high school student, if it was a parent. So those were all things like flags in the data that you would need to actually kind of dig in a little bit deeper and make different decisions. Investment resources. What are you going to pay for next year once COVID money went away, right? So having that CIO in the room, having those data people in the room who are going to throw every single, well, we can't do it because I'm a translator with data people and they do it to me all day long. But they bring up those points of pain that you may be able to get rid of prior to implementing a system. So having the people in there that are going to collect the information and then knowing what questions you want answered at the end of it is going to be so critical to making the work more powerful.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Katrina, and thank you all for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this experience. And so with that, we'll turn it over to Carissa.